quorum here, so we'll call the meeting to order. And let's look at the minutes and see if we want to approve those.
Move to approve.
Do we have a second to approve minutes?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Unfinished business code review. Sean.
Hi, good morning. I'm Sean Radnick, the Inspections Director for the City of Fargo, and I'm going to talk about the IRC provisions for chapters 1, 3, and then 6 through 6. It's just some cleanup with some language that we missed before. The first one is in chapter 1 on page 27 of the IRC. It's 101 or 103.1, the creation of the enforcement agency. We just saw that historically the name of the enforcement agency was wrong. So we just wanted to make sure we corrected that in the new adoption. So it's just the inspections department instead of, I think it was the Department of, I can't remember right offhand. And then we'll move on to chapter 3, page 103, 318.3.2, floor elevations at other exterior doors, is amended to read as follows, and we just updated what is it? The landings and floor, instead of 7 3/4 inches, it's supposed to be at 8 inches, so it matches the rest of the code. And then we also changed the exception of not more than 2 risers to 30 inches so that it is consistent with the rest of the code. And then at 318.7.6 on page 104, basically the same thing, as we just corrected the 7 3/4 in number 2 to 8, and then changed it to a total rise of not more than 30 inches. Of less than 30 inches, I'm sorry, instead of not more than 2 risers, just to stay consistent. Then we go to chapter 4, section 104.1. I'm sorry, I don't have the page number. This is a previous amendment, and it's just changing out section R322 and replacing with the Fargo Flood Code. Moving on to 401.3, the exception. We're deleting that exception. And just amending it back to the way it was previously. Section 403.1.4.1. The exceptions, we made a few corrections to that. Protection of freestanding accessory structures of light frame construction shall not be required, as we previously had. Again, protection of freestanding accessory structures, areas of 400 or less, or other light frame construction shall not be required. And then adding number 3, uncovered decks need not be provided with footings that extend below the frost line, as we had previously. Section 404.1.3.2, I just wanted to make sure that the tables that we have adopted previously are in the code, tables and figures, just to make sure that we have looked at those and adopted those as we had before. Moving on to chapter 5, section 507.3 and 507.3.1 are both deleted in their entirety. Chapter 6 is 602.7.2 is amended to take out the number of full height studs at each end shall be not less than 1 plus the number of studs displaced by half of the header span based on the maximum stud spacing in accordance with table 602.3.5. We're just amending it back to the way we've been doing it. It's been working, so we don't want to mess with it. Again, section 602.7.5, we're doing the same thing there, just to make sure that we're staying consistent with what we were, what's been working for us. Table 602.7.5 is deleted in its entirety. And that's all we have for the IRC. Any questions?
Don't believe so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Lynn Olson. I'm one of the rental housing inspectors for the Building Inspections Department. And I am presenting an invigorating code adoption of the International Property Maintenance Code this morning. starting with section 101, page 9, the title. We are doing the same local designation for the amendment as the City of Fargo. Section 101.3, creation of agency, page 10. Again, is the same local amendment establishing the Building Inspections Department for the City of Fargo. Section 104.1 had a notable change. That would be page 10. We are now including code enforcement within this fee schedule. Both rental and code enforcement enforce the International Property Maintenance Code, and this will change their fee from $75 to $150. We also added under letter F, a replacement for removal of building placard, $150. Section 105.2 through 105.2.3 is a new section. It's identical to the previous codes with the IBC and the IRC adoption that you guys have already heard. Section 105.3, page 11, right of entry. This gives us right of entry to conduct our inspections. Since in rental and code enforcement, we don't operate under open permits. This establishes our ability for enforcement. There's also an added section 105.3.1 to the IPMC for obtaining a warrant if needed. That is a new section. This has already been our practice if needed, but now it's outlined in the International Property Maintenance Code. 105.7 liability, page 12, is again the same local amendment across all the codes. There is an addition from the attorney, and that is underlined under that 105.7 liability underneath of the initial wording. Moving to section 105.9 is actually newly added by us. This would be to issue an additional certificate of occupancy to rental properties. Typically, rental properties age into RQ at about 15 years from construction, which gives us the opportunity for the change in some of the building code applications, some of the things that we've run into, even older properties where they don't even have smoke detectors in bedrooms. So once they get to that point, then we go in and we bring them up to what would be current code compliance. The new construction properties already meet or are well above our minimum standard for rental qualifications. The additional certificate of occupancy would be issued automatically for those newer construction properties. It is with the older properties that have not been maintained and don't meet minimum standard that we feel like we need more support in this area. The information on the certificate of occupancy would be the same information as obtained for any other certificate of occupancy under any other code. So section 105.9 is hereby amended to read as follows. For any property that has dwelling units or sleeping units occupied by anyone other than the owner or their family members, and regardless if rent, services, or other means of payment are collected or not, a secondary certificate of occupancy shall be issued showing compliance with this code and any other codes or ordinances adopted by the City of Fargo. If the property title is transferred to another person or entity, the current or previous secondary certificate of occupancy shall be void, and a new secondary certificate of occupancy shall be obtained. Issue an open permit for 3 years, a 3-year duration before a property can be used as a rental. 105.9.1 certificate issued. After the building official inspects the building or structure and does not find violations of the provisions of this code or other laws that are enforced by the department, the building official shall issue a certificate of occupancy containing the following: the address of the structure, the name and address of the owner or the owner's authorized agent, a description of that portion of the structure for which the certificate is issued, A statement that described portion of the structure has been inspected for compliance with the requirements of this code. The name of the building official, the edition of the code under which the certificate was issued, where an automatic sprinkler system is provided, and whether the sprinkler system is required. Any special stipulations and conditions of the certificate of occupancy. 105.9.2 revocation. The building official is authorized to suspend or revoke a certificate of occupancy issued under the provisions of this code in writing wherever their certificate is issued in error or on the basis of incorrect information supplied, or where it is determined that the building or structure or portion thereof is in violation of the provisions of this code or other ordinance of the jurisdiction. Would you like to ask any questions on that one?
One of the things that you had mentioned is kind of updating them to new code. And I know with smoke detectors and stuff, that's relatively easy to do. With sprinkler systems, it's not.
Right.
So at what level are you going to be doing that?
So we really operate under the code in which the building was constructed when it comes to sprinkler systems. So we've not ordered a sprinkler system to be added to a building.
Okay. Because I know a lot of people are assuming that they're grandfathered, but it looks like we're making some of the newer parts of the code come into it for rentals.
Right. Within,
Words.
yeah, there are. So in the property maintenance code, it does have updated guidelines for locations of smoke detectors, the addition of carbon monoxide, wherein the IRC, so the residential code, where there's that requirement for the interconnection on smoke detectors, we don't require that in rentals. So that just a regular battery operated single station smoke detector is allowed in a rental property.
Okay.
Do you have anything you want to add?
The interconnection we're still looking for, it's hardware.
Hardwiring, sorry.
That they are hardwired. Are they not required to be hardwired? Is that what you're saying,
No.
John? Or?
We haven't done interconnection on rentals though either, but
So what we're looking at is, if they have to add smoke detectors and stuff, we're looking for the interconnection because that technology is available on the market. What we're saying is they don't have to be hardwired into the structure, so you're not gonna have to hire an electrician to go through the attic and drop down lines and stuff like that. We're looking for the easiest possible solution for them. So there's battery operated interconnected smoke detector systems out there, and that's what we'd be asking them to install in certain areas.
And that's interconnected per unit?
Yeah, it would be per unit. It wouldn't be, if you're in like, say, a 5-unit building, each unit would be independent of the other units.
Okay. Okay.
okay. Moving on, in section 111.1 general, there was quite a bit that was struck out and then added, but that did not change the intent of the code. But what we did add in were stipulations 3 and 4. Stipulation 3 was in the 2021 code, and that was boarding of the building up for future repair shall not extend beyond 1 year unless approved by the building official. We added that back in. And then we added a new stipulation, number 4, upon completion of demolition, sufficient filling and grading shall be done to bring the area of demolition up to the same level as the existing yard. Frozen fill is not allowed. Section 202, definitions new to the IPMC. They added some definitions. We added 2 of our own. We added definitions for motorized and non-motorized vehicles. Motorized vehicle, an object used for transporting people or goods on land under its own power, such as a car, truck, or similar. Non-motorized vehicle, an object used for transporting people or goods on land using an external source of power, such as a trailer or similar. Section 303.2.1 through 303.2.18 is the pool barrier addition that was read and adopted in 2024. I'm not going to read all of that to you all over again.
That matches what was in the IRC that we just went through, I assume.
The pool barrier was from Sean will come back and tell you where it came from.
Actually, we actually pulled the pool barrier language from the pool and spa code of the IRC, or ICC. It's not in the IRC provisions. What basically it said in the IPMC previous to this was that they needed to have some type of barrier, but we always had questions on what kind of barrier can I put up, what is allowed, what is not, and we really had no guidelines and no provisions for it. So what we did is we went into the pool and spa code and pulled out what they had. We deleted some things and, and changed some things around so it was more applicable. If you remember when we had the meeting here about it, we were talking about the chain link fence and the openings on the chain link fence, whether or not they needed to be a certain size, and we amended that to 2 inches instead of 1.25 inches, things like that, so you can get the materials readily available at any big box store in town. So it's not really changing much. It's just basically providing guidelines for what type of barrier they need to have installed and how that, the latching and things of that nature are to be done. It also has things in there. One of the exceptions to it is if you have a pool cover that is up to certain standards, then you can negate some of that stuff. It also uses natural topography and things like that as barriers. So we're trying to provide guidance with this portion of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Section 304.14, insect screens, page 22, is the same amendment we've established previously, and that is the required dates for screens on windows from April 1st to October 31st. Section 307, page 25, we a change in the IPMC, and we added our own change. It initially said, every exterior and interior flight of stairs having more than 4 risers shall have a handrail on one side. We changed it to be in line with the IRC to be stairs having 4 or more risers. They have a handrail on one side of the stairway. In section 309.6, page 25, we are now requiring a licensed contractor for extermination of insects and vermins in rental properties. The City of Fargo Environmental Health Department is responsible for issuing those licenses. Both sections 310 and 311, accessibility and storm shelters, were new in the 24 code. They were added to the IPMC to be consistent with the IRC and IBC. Section 404.6, efficiency unit, was changed to match the IBC. The content is the same. Previously, the wording of the code and the table in the section did not match, and now the content matches the table and across all the codes. Our next newly added section is 405, daycare. We, as rental inspectors, do inspections, initial inspections on home daycare locations, so single-family homes. Sometimes it is in an apartment complex, like 1 unit. So we go out and we do that initial inspection and issue a certificate of occupancy for a home occupation for them to be allowed to do that. So we do the initial once-over of everything to be sure that it's code compliant and up to safety standards. Up until now, we haven't had a specific code to point to do that, and so that is why we looked at the BD appendix from the IRC, and a lot of it was extremely applicable to what we look at, and so we adopted it into this, and then also changed a few things to sort of maintain across our current codes. So that would be 405, page 28. This section shall apply to home daycare operation within a dwelling. It is to include buildings and structures occupied by persons of any age who receive custodial care for less than 24 hours by individuals other than parents or guardians or relatives by blood, marriage, or adoption in a place other than the home of the person cared for. Section 405.2.1 general, the following terms shall, for the purpose of this section, have the meaning shown herein. Exit access, that portion of a means of egress system that leads from any occupied point in a building or structure to an exit. Means of egress, exits required, 405.13.1. 2 exits are required from a home daycare. Exit shall comply with section R3-118. 405.3.1.1, exit access prohibited. An exit access from the area of daycare operation shall not pass through bathrooms, bedrooms, closets, garages, fenced rear yards, or similar areas. There is an exception. An exit may discharge into a fenced area if the gate or gates remain unlocked during daycare hours. The gate may be locked if there is an area of refuge located within the fenced yard and more than 50 feet from the dwelling. The area of refuge shall be large enough to allow 5 square feet per occupant. 405.3.1.2, basements. If the basement of a dwelling is to be used in the daycare operation, 2 exits are required from the basement regardless of the occupant load. One of the exits may pass through the dwelling and the other shall lead directly to the exterior of the dwelling. An emergency and escape window as used as the second means of egress from the basement shall comply with section R3-19 and 405.3.1.1. Yards, 405.3.1.3. Yards to be used as part of the daycare operation shall be fenced. 405.3.1.3.1, type of fence and hardware. The fence shall be of durable materials and not less than 4 feet. The 4 feet was our amendment, or our change. It said 6 feet, but we went with the 4 feet, which is the same as in the pool barrier. 4 feet tall, completely enclosed the area used for the daycare operations. Each opening shall be a gate or door. Construction of a fence. Opening in the fence, wall, or enclosure required by the section shall have an intermediate rails or an ornamental pattern that do not allow a sphere 4 inches in diameter to pass through. In addition, the following criteria must be met. The maximum vertical clearance between grade and bottom of the fence, wall, or enclosure shall be 2 inches. Solid wall or enclosures that do not have openings such as masonry or stone walls shall not contain indentations or protrusions except for tooled masonry joints. Maximum mesh size for chain link fences shall be 2 inches square, unless the fence has slats at the top or bottom that reduce the opening not to more than 2 inches. The wire shall not be less than 9 gauge. 405.3.2, width and height of an exit. The minimum width of a required exit is 36 inches with a net clear width of 32 inches. The minimum height of a required exit is 6 feet 8 inches. 405.3.3, type of lock and latches for exits. Regardless of the occupant load served, exit doors shall be openable from the inside without the use of a key or any special knowledge or effort. 405.3.4, landings. Landings for stairways and doors shall comply with section R318, except that landings shall be required for the exterior side of a sliding door where a home daycare is being operated in a group R3 occupancy. 405.4, smoke detection. Smoke detectors shall be installed in dwelling units used for home daycare operations. Detectors shall be installed in accordance with the approved manufacturer's instructions. If the current smoke detection system in the dwelling is not in compliance with the currently adopted code for smoke detection, it shall be upgraded to meet the currently adopted code requirements and section, this should actually be a 405, before daycare operations commence. Power source. The detectors shall emit a signal when batteries are low. Required smoke detectors shall be interconnected such that if one detector is activated, all detectors are activated. That is where we struck out the permanent wiring and just required the interconnection. 405.4.3, location. A detector shall be located in each bedroom and any room that is to be used as a sleeping room and centrally located in the corridor, hallway, or area given access to each separate sleeping area. Where the dwelling unit has more than one story and in dwellings with basements, a detector shall be installed on each story and in the basement. In dwelling units where a story or basement is split into 2 or more levels, the smoke detector shall be installed on the upper level, except that where the lower level contains a sleeping area, a detector shall be installed on each level. Where sleeping rooms are on the upper level, the detector shall be placed at the ceiling of the upper level in close proximity to the stairway. In dwelling units where the ceiling height of a room open to the hallway serving the bedrooms or sleeping area exceeds that of the hallway by 24 inches or more, smoke detectors shall be installed in the hallway and adjacent room. Detectors shall sound an alarm audible in all sleeping areas of the dwelling unit which they are located. Okay, that is daycares. Do you have any questions for myself or Sean, I guess? Field some questions on that one.
I have a question.
Yep.
So back to the egress, what section was it here? Where you're adding, that needs to be 2 exits. I think it's 405.3. Is a traditional, just standard residential unit, does that need to have 2 exits without daycare?
So under currently adopted code, yes, they pretty much do. If you have, say, a basement and you have to have 1 egress window and then the stairs, and that's your 2 exits. So all the standard homes that we have in being put up now and for a few cycles in the past here meet those requirements easily. It's going to be something like an older home where the stairs might not meet the headroom requirements and things like that. They may have to do some changes here and there, and then maybe add an egress window.
So it's not special to, because it's a daycare, that it has to have 2 exits?
No, it's not
Because it could be
special to
similar to like a
daycares.
large family or something.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that it's in there because we've had some issues in the past where there was no code to point to say for a daycare you have to have this because the older home was built under previous code. And then we have a situation where they have a daycare in a basement without any egress windows and the stairs are not an egress either. So there's basically no egress out of there. If the stairs happen to catch on fire, the fire is close enough where you can't use the stairs, you're kind of stuck. And we don't want that to happen. We want, rescuers to be able to get in as well as people be able to get out on their own.
Okay, thank you.
Sean, one other question on that same issue, what I was getting out of it when it was read through is that the window in that basement area can't be one that's in a bedroom or something that you're using that. It actually has to be in the general area. And you're allowed to use the stairs to get up to your second exit. But is my assumption correct on that they do have to have a window in that general area, not using one that's in a bedroom?
That's actually an interesting question that we have not thought about, to be honest with you. In the general area, in a basement type situation, if they have a bedroom where it's got an egress window, I think that our inspectors would be comfortable enough to allow that egress window to be their second means of egress out of there, even though it is going through a bedroom. What we're looking for is the primary egress, going up the stairs and stuff like that, where those stairs don't terminate in a bedroom or a kitchen or, something like that, where there's a higher probability of having an issue when you come up those stairs. But if you're in a basement and you have an egress window in a bedroom, I don't think that our inspectors are going to say, well, you have to now put in another egress window. We would count that as secondary means of egress.
Okay.
Sorry, and I'll
problem.
expand on that. So, I mean, just thinking of all the options or the possibilities. So in that case, what if that particular bedroom that has the egress, the door is locked?
During daycare hours, they wouldn't be able to lock that door.
Okay. Yeah, for the daycare.
Yep.
I'm thinking probably more just a residential house, but, okay.
Yeah, I would think they could just require them not to have a lock on that door,
Yeah.
period.
I do believe there's state stipulations when they come through and they do inspections on these things more readily than we do, where those doors can't be locked. They can't be lockable to the point where you have to use some special means to get through them
Okay.
typically, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Section 603.2 has been amended, the same that we have in the past. Heat supply, page 31. We add the dates September 15th to June 1st as the requirement of time frame that they are required to provide heat in a rental property. There is a new exception that we added for older structures. The exception is in older structures where the original design of the heating system operating at full capacity is unable to achieve the minimum temperature required, the system shall be deemed adequate.
How large of a range are you allowing on that? Because, I mean, if you've got a heating system that's not capable of doing its job, I think they need to fix it. So,
So our range is not gonna be, 40 degrees, 45 degrees, anything like that. That's not a livable condition. If they're down to 60 or 62 degrees and that system's going as hard as it can to try and keep up, but it's an older building where it doesn't retain the heat as well, and it's got older windows, it's got older, walls and stuff that don't have the insulation requirements, we'd look at it that one is adequate. We don't have any buildings that drop below basically that 60-degree mark-ish.
okay.
So we wouldn't be looking at an extreme temperature drop. We'd be looking at something more like you might have to put on a jacket.
I guess what my concern could be there, and Ryan could probably weigh in on this too, but I put out a lot of fires because of space heaters in my years. And when that temperature gets, much below that 68, 70 degrees, they're plugging in space heaters and then not using those correctly, and you got a problem. So something to consider.
And what we see with this exception, the thing that we see most of the time is in these older buildings, you'll have boiler systems, and they light those boiler systems at certain times of the year. And you might have a little bit of a cold snap where you've got 2 or 3 weeks where it's kind of cool, and it gets down to 62 in those units,
Okay.
and they're not lighting those boilers because it's just a cold snap and then it warms back up. We see people using the heaters all the time anyway. Another thing that they do is if they have to try and bring in supplementary heat like baseboard heaters and stuff like that, there's a hazard there too, because some people don't understand that you got to keep things away from those. And then you're creating a fire hazard by making them supplement that heat at times. So what it is we're using this as a way to say, I understand that, your boiler system is going, it's going as hard as it can. We're not gonna make you spend, $50,000, $100,000 to put in this supplementary heat to get 2 or 3 degrees. It's gonna be kind of a thing where we'll have to make a determination on site, this is dropping too low, you guys need to do something. You need to update it. You need to check your heating system and see if you can change it around or do something else with it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I can certainly understand when it's kind of off season, you get that cold snap, not wanting to fire up an old style boiler. But if it's December, January, and it's inadequate
yeah.
by much more than 2-3 degrees, they should look at the fact that they need to do something.
Yeah, and that's why we wrote it as an exception. We can make the exception, but if we feel the exception is not appropriate for that particular unit or that particular building, because that system is it was designed in a way and it's not keeping up because there were changes made or something like that, then they're gonna have to do something with that system as well.
Okay.
So it's not a get out of jail free card for a lot of people.
Yeah.
What it is just giving our inspectors a little bit of latitude to say, I know in the code it says you have to be up to 68 degrees. This boiler system's going as hard as it can, and it's only at 65. Under the strict letter of the code, we'd have to make them supplement that heat. But for 3 degrees, is it really gonna be worth the cost? And is it really gonna be worth the headache for that owner or even the people in the building to be able to have that? It didn't make much sense to us to be able to have that. We've seen it in a few instances. It's not common. But, in some of these older historical buildings that have been converted a little bit, it's just allowing them to use the system they have on hand that they've maintained, and it's in good working condition, and it's working as it should, and it's up to full capacity, and they're doing everything they can to keep the heat as high as possible. But if it starts dipping down too low, we are gonna make them do something with it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Section 606.3, Page 33, private residence elevators was added to the IPMC to match the other codes. And section 702, this was part of the fire, 702, general changed egress path of travel for building to be under the code it was constructed versus the international fire code. Have any other questions on the IPMC? Sean wants to interject.
Actually, Ryan just brought it up to me that for that last exception we were discussing, we could add a stipulation in there where approved by the building official. That way, we have the authority to say that this is not an approved way to use this. You need to do something else for the heating systems.
Yeah, I guess what my concern is, you know, the older people get, the more heat they need. So if you got grandma renting an apartment, 68 isn't even enough, usually.
Yeah.
You know, so it's what our minimum is, just making sure we're not getting too far out of what a blanket or something can
Yeah, and
serve.
that's where we're coming from on it. That's our intent with this exception, is that if it's, you know, a little cool and you have to wear a sweater or, you know, use a blanket or something, we find that'll be acceptable, especially for shorter periods of time. But if it's out of the norm where it's going to be, you know, we can only heat this building to 55, you got to do something else. And that's where we can put in where approved by the building official. That way we can say this is not approved. You need to do something. Where if it's 65 as opposed to 68, then we can say, you know, well, they're doing what they can. And I don't think that 3 degrees is really going to matter that much. Even if a lot of those people, even if they're getting up to that 68 degrees and they're able to maintain that, we end up with space heaters anyway. And because they want it at 75, you know, things like that. So, I mean, we end up seeing the space heaters regardless if they can meet the 68 or not sometimes. So,
Okay.
so we can add that provision if you guys feel the need for it.
Yeah, you know, it just maybe brings in building inspection that's maybe a little more thorough than just a temperature thing. Is the problem the boiler or the windows like screens, or, you know, why won't this building hold heat?
Yeah, and that's
You know, so it might be that type of thing where that's something that we should be doing with that owner.
yeah. Our inspectors already do look at that. If there's window issues and stuff like that, we ask the windows to be replaced and things. So if they've got gaps or the windows failing, we already look at that and ask them to replace those things.
Okay.
So, you know, and that could be the cause of it. Hopefully that's what the cause is.
Yep.
But we do have some older buildings where they can maintain a temperature of, say, 65 on the lower level, on the main floor. But then the upper levels, when that thing is going as hard as it can, they're at 70, 75, and then those tenants are roasting where they don't want to be. And
the
they're
windows
opening
open.
windows and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's only for the older buildings where there's a, you know, we're trying to make a little bit of leeway so that we're not forcing somebody to install a brand new system where they don't really need it, you know.
Okay. All right. No, sounds good. I just want to make sure that we're
Yeah,
somehow addressing that at a high enough level so we don't have people stuck for 3 months at low
Yeah.
temp.
that's not our intent with it at all. And if there's changes that need to be made to it because there's circumstances that we come across where this isn't working, you know, we'll bring it back to the board and make changes and stuff. So,
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. With that, do we have any new business to look at, John?
No new business?
Any announcements?
Nope.
With that, look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned.
All right, thank you.